All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 5 of the online Rankin Technical College AWD1100 C# programming class. Today, as it says, we're going to build 2 versions of a payroll program. Now, what I'm going to do, just so you know, is I'm going to do this very slowly because I'm going to introduce some stuff that we're actually not going to get into until later chapters, but I wanted you to see how you can set your programs up. One way you can set your programs up so that you can be assured that you will have valid input put in. So we're going to go over that, and we'll do that both as a console version and as a Windows app version. All right. I did want to mention before we even get started and before I go into tomorrow, this is the last time I'll bring it up. All right. There were a total of, there's 17 people in the class. A total of 6 people contacted me and said they would like a book and they would like it to be at the Wentzville campus, which is fine. Well, when we got the books from St. Louis, they only sent 5. So there are 5 books right now at the Wentzville campus. The other one is being sent and should be here either tomorrow or Monday of next week. 3 of you said that you would like to receive the books at the St. Louis campus. You should be able to go in there right now and get a copy of the book. All right, you may have to give some kind of an identification and show who you are, but I let Sean Bauer, who runs the bookstore, I let him know about that. And there were 1 or 2 people that actually just contacted me yesterday and said, hey, I know it's late, but can I still get a book? Yes. All right. So you should be able to go to the campus that you want. Like I said, if for some reason 5 of the 6 of you were to go to Wentzville today, then that last person may have to wait until tomorrow or Monday to get their book. All right, enough of that. I don't want to talk about the books anymore. Now, tomorrow, as it says, will be your first hands-on test. You may or may not believe this, but you are unbelievably prepared for this test. All right, with all the examples that we've gone over, I'm not saying, oh, it's going to be a slam dunk, but I would think that you should be able to do well on it. As it says right here, I will email you an electronic copy of the test by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, then we will go over the test during our regular class time, and what that means is beginning at 8:05, I'll spend about 15 minutes going over the test. It shouldn't take any more than that. It may take a little less. Now, I plan on saving that lecture as a private video. Why? Because they're taking the same test at the St. Louis campus, but I think they're a couple days behind us, so I don't want to put that out there. All right? If for some reason, and I will send you an email on this tomorrow, but if for some reason you don't get the invite, or the invite doesn't work or whatever, you must let me know so I can make other, try to come up with some kind of another thing to do with you, okay? As it says, the rest of the period tomorrow, so really 3.5 hours, will be for you to work on the test. Some of you might finish it fairly quickly. Some of you might take most of the period to work on that. All right, I'll be online until 12 noon, all right, or 11:55. And after that, I check my email fairly periodically, and I will be up until 10 p.m. Now, it's not due till midnight, but if you have questions between 11 and midnight, I'm sorry, I'll be in bed. All right. Now, you can either take the folder that you will use to create the test, zip it, and email it to me. Or if you want to try working with a GitHub repository, you can do that as well. I'm going to show you GitHub again today. So again, that'll be tomorrow. Then on Friday, we'll go over at least chapter 4, but we'll see where we are. I'd like to go over 4 and 5. And believe me, I'm not rushing through these. All right, after we go through that, we're going to go through tons of examples on 4 and tons of examples on 5. All right, so as it says, this will continue in the next week. So again, in my please remembers, you've already heard this. Test will be given tomorrow. Test is due tomorrow by midnight. All right. your completed Murach chapters 1 through 3 homework, and we did the homework in class. I think that was on day 2, and that lecture should be out there. And written tests are due by midnight this Sunday. What I am planning on doing when we get all done today with these 2 payroll programs is I'm going to go through chapter 1 with you. All right, I'm going to say that again. I'm going to go through the chapter 1 written test with you. All right, okay. So with all that said, I'm going to get started. And I'm going to get started. Now, when you do this, it doesn't matter if you go into GitHub first, create your repository, and then add stuff to it, or you go in and you get everything ready and then create the repository. You can do it either way. It really and truly does not matter. All right. What I'll do is, since this is open right now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to click New. All right. And I'm going to make a new repository. I don't know if I have one called Payroll or not. All right. Oop, I need to choose an owner, which is me. And it says it already exists. So I'll tell you what I'll call it. I'll call it C# Payroll. And you can see that exists. All right. So I'm going to create that right now. And again, that means that out on GitHub, by the end of the period today, there will be a repository out there that you can go and hook onto and grab the code if you want to. And again, I've said this before, yours will be private, mine is public. All right. You can go in and read this stuff, and you can add git ignores and add readme. You really don't have to do any of that stuff. So I'm going to click create repository. All right. And what that means is now, right here, just so you see this, I'm not done yet, but I want you to see this. That means that right now, come on, right there on that particular URL that you can see right there, that is where my GitHub repository currently lives. All right. So what you'll be able to do later today, if you so desire, is you can put in that URL, and I'll give this to you later also in an email, but that's where it will exist. Right now, it's empty. There's absolutely nothing in it. So what do we have to do? Well, all this stuff, notice these all stuff, all this stuff we do on our own machine here. All right. The only thing we really have to do here on this machine now is these last 2 things. We have to set up an origin. What that does is it's going to allow there to be a communication mechanism between Git that we have on our machine and GitHub, which you see right here. And then once we're done, we're going to have to push that thing out. So what I'm going to do is, just for now, is I'm going to grab this line of code that says git remote add origin, and it's got that same path I just showed you. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose copy. All right. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to create a brand new folder, and it has to be called the same thing as my GitHub repository. So that was C# Payroll. All right. So right now, as you'd guess, there's nothing in it. All right. And this is where we're going to create both of our programs today. But what I can do is I can right mouse click on it. I can choose open git bash here, which opens this up in this window. All right, I'm making it bigger so you can read everything. Now I can type in git init, and when I hit enter again, you're going to see a folder there that's called .git. There it is. And I can paste in what I just grabbed over from YouTube right there. All that is saying again is, hey, I want you to associate this Git with this thing on GitHub. They are 2 different things. Git doesn't own GitHub. GitHub doesn't own Git. All right, they are 2 different things. So I'm going to hit enter. And all it does is it comes back with my prompt. But if I type in, this is just to verify that it worked, get remote -v, like victory, it says, okay, when I come in later, remember that command that we talked about, get push -u origin. All right, so there's origin. It's right here. It's https://github.com/jpscottrankin/c#payroll.git. And you'll notice it says both fetch and it says push on there. I push it on there. I'm the owner. I push it on there. You fetch it from there. But we're using the same address, whether you're either grabbing it from GitHub or sending it out to GitHub. All right. And I do want you to understand something. All right. GitHub, or Git and GitHub, they do work together. And with what we're doing right now, we're going to be creating 2 versions of a payroll program. But as we go on in this class, as we go on, I will be updating each of these payroll programs. And as I do, I will update this out on GitHub. So what will happen is there'll be several versions of it out there. You don't have to worry about that right now. We'll talk about it at another time. All right. So right now I do have this C# payroll. And as we've done, I'm going to start up Visual Studio Community Edition 2022. I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to do the console one first. Okay. And we can call this whatever we want. It's going to be a payroll app. So I'm going to call the console one Payroll Console. And I'm going to call the GUI one Payroll GUI, which is our Windows Forms app. And they're both going to be under the C# payroll folder that we just created. So again, right here, I'm going to type in Payroll Console. And you'll notice that by default, again, it calls the solution the same thing. I don't want that. I just want it to be called Payroll. All right. And I have to tell it what folder I want it to be in. So again, I'm going to come out here and there's C# payroll. All right. So my project name was Payroll Console. It is saved on my C drive under my desktop in a folder called C# payroll. The name is Payroll. So when I click create, what you're going to see here, if you look, the solution, Payroll, the project, Payroll Console. And if I were to go back here to what I just started creating, there's the folder C# Payroll. It has inside of it a folder called Payroll. And inside of it, it has a folder called Payroll Console. That's the project folder. A little bit later, we'll have a Payroll GUI folder in there as well. All right. So again, I am basically going to write the same program in here twice. One of them will be console. So in other words, not GUI. It won't have any controls on it. It's going to be all code. The next iteration of it that we write, the Payroll GUI, will have controls on it. All right. And again, I'm trying to take my time here. I know a couple times people will say to me, you know, boy, you're kind of going fast. I don't try to. I'm going to start with my using static system.console. So I don't have to write console.something or system.console something. All right. I've also created a comment in here. So I'm going to put in that comment. And after I do, I'm going to go over it with you. All right. So this is a C# payroll program. I'm going to be inputting 4 things: a person's first name, a person's last name, the number of hours a person worked, and the amount of money a person makes per hour. I do have constants associated with these. We'll go over that in just a moment. Now it says all inputs are validated. What that means is you can't have an empty first name or blank. You can't have an empty or blank last name. The hours worked must be numeric, and it must be between 0 and 84. The hourly rate must be numeric, and it must be between 0 and 99.99. Now, the 99.99 is just an arbitrary value I picked up. I just put it out there. The hours worked, I figured 0 to 84. No one that I know of works more than 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so 84 seemed like it would be fine. Again, all the inputs will be validated for what I just told you. All right. Then based on, once we got a first name and a last name and an hours worked and an hourly rate, we'll figure out the person's gross pay. If the person worked 40 or less hours, they don't get any overtime. Their gross pay will be their hours worked times their hourly rate. If they work more than 40 hours, they'll get overtime pay, which we're going to set up as a constant, an overtime rate, and it'll be 1.5, meaning they get time and a half. This could be changed, so if you wanted to make a double time or something, you could do that. All right. So for each person, we're going to print out, for the individual outputs, it's not only going to be the gross pay. I mean, I could put this in here as well, because for each person, we are going to print out their first name, their last name, their hours worked, and their hourly rate, and the calculated gross pay. In addition, as we go through this, we're going to figure out the total number of employees, the total gross pay of all employees, and then we'll divide that total gross pay by the total number of employees and get the average gross pay for an employee. All right. Now, hopefully I didn't go through that too fast, but again, it is, it's a relatively, I'm not going to say simple, all right, but it's not a complex program right now. All right. So to come in here and we're going to start building our stuff right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare about half a dozen constants here. So I'm going to come in here and say declare and initialize program constants. All right. Again, constants normally are declared like this at the top of the program. I've already told you about all these constants, whether you realize it or not. They're all going to be decimal. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm just going to grab this. Now, it doesn't like this right now because it's a const decimal what, but we're going to fill them in right now. The minimum hours that you can work are going to be equal to 0. The maximum hours that you can work are going to be equal to 84.0 M. All right. The minimum hourly rate is going to be equal to 0. The maximum hourly rate is going to be equal to 99.99 M. I think I mentioned this before, but just in case I did not, when you use the number just a 0 like this and like this, you don't have to put an M after it. You can, but you don't have to. But if there's an actual value in there, you need the M or you're going to get an error. Now, I'm going to call another thing max non-OT. And what is that? That's the most numbers or the most hours you can work without getting any overtime. So that's the max number of of hours that you can work without getting overtime, and that's 40. All right. Finally, we'll have one more in here, and that's just going to be called OT rate, and it's going to be equal to 1.5 M. And again, that's time and a half. So if for some reason you wanted to change that and make it double time, you would just change it to 2 or 2.0 M. All right. So those are our constants. Now, I'm not putting, comments in after each one of these to explain them. My hope is that I've used, between the names I've used here and the explanation that I've given you, that I did enough that you understand what each one of those things are. Okay. Next, I'm going to come in and I'm going to create about 8 variables. Now, these variables are going to be declared right here. What that means is they're going to be declared outside of any routine. What that means is these variables that we're creating are all what are referred to as global to our program. That means they don't have to be passed around. And if you say, I don't know what that means, that's what we're going to start covering next week. All right. Just so we didn't have to get into that right now, I kept everything global. This is much easier. So all of these variables that are in here are going to be dealing directly or indirectly with main. Since main is static, what you have to do when you declare variables up here is you have to make them static too. All right. So I'm going to say here, again, declare and initialize global variables. And we're going to put those right here. So static string first, so that's somebody's first name. We'll set it equal to nothing. Static string last, and we'll set that equal to nothing. Static decimal hours, that'll be equal to 0M. All right. Static decimal rate, and that'll be equal to 0M. All right. And again, as I mentioned to you before, we're going to directly or indirectly say hours times rate, and that's going to be our gross. All right. We're also going to have a total gross, which is going to be the, all gross pays combined. And I called it total gross. We're going to have another one for average gross. And finally, we're going to have an integer, which is total EMPs or total EMPs. And that'll be equal to 0. Now, my hope is, and I'll just pad all these out so you can see what's going on, that everything that's in here makes sense to you. All right. So the first and last probably do. Okay, that's a person's first name and their last name. This will be the hours they work. And again, they have to be between 0 and 84. This will be the hourly rate. And again, it has to be between 0 and 99.99. This will be their gross, which if they work 40 hours or less, it'll just be hours times rate. And if they work more than 40 hours, they'll get some overtime. When I add up each one of the grosses, I'm going to put them into a variable called total gross. Total gross is actually referred to as an accumulator because what I'm doing here is I am accumulating all the grosses. All right. Then eventually I'll want to take the total gross and I'll want to divide that by my total number of employees, and that'll give me my average gross. All right. Now you might turn around and say, well, who even cares about an average gross? Yeah, in many ways you could look at the program as being kind of contrived. All right. It's like, oh, why do this? Why do this? I'm just doing it because I'm doing it. And maybe that sounds silly or stupid, but I'm just trying to be able to demonstrate as much of the stuff in here as possible. All right. Now, I tried to set this up so we can run the program over and over and over again. All right. To do that, we have to put the program into a loop. We talk about loop next week, but I wanted to show this to you right now. The way I'm going to show this to you is just so you see it, and we're going to go over this again next week. So if it doesn't totally make sense, please don't let it bother you. But let's pretend for a minute that I want to write a program and I want it to look like this. I want it to show me the numbers between 1 and 10. So when I run the program, I want it to go 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, 4 space, 5 space, 6 space, 7 space, 8 space, 9 space, 10. That's my desired program output. And I want to quickly show you 3 ways that I can do that. All right. Yeah, I am going a little bit into next week, but I just want to show you this. All right, the first thing I can do when let me just write it and then I'll explain because you might not understand my namings here. Um, Now, if I come at the end of this and I do my right line, and I tell it to right line, output str, I can guarantee you that what that's going to print is this right here. All right. Now I'm going to leave this all up here for at least for a few minutes, and I want to explain what's happening in each one of these lines of code. Right here, this line of code that you see right here that says int LCV equals 0, this is a loop. LCV is the variable that's controlling the loop. So I call it LCV for loop control variable. So right there in this line, what I'm doing is I'm initializing the loop control variable. All right. This is initializing the string that's going to print out the output. We called it output str. I don't think I need to put a comment there. This is testing the value of the loop control variable. All right. What do I mean by testing it? The first time through, it's 1. Is 1 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. So it goes into the body. It prints the value of LCV, which is 1, followed by a space. This adds 1 to LCV. If that confuses you, we could have just said LCV equals LCV plus 1. So now the loop control variable is 2. Is 2 less than equal to 10? Yes, it is. So we had 1 space and then we had 2 space. We do that all the way through 10. So 1 space, 2 space, and there will even be a space after that. That will be our output. All right. So this right here, this is changing the value of the loop control variable. Let me just put var here so it doesn't run off the screen. How about this? Test value of loop control variable, change value of loop control variable. When you are working with a loop like this, and I'm going to show you quickly in just a moment, 2 other kinds of loops. All right. But when you are working with a looping mechanism like this, these are the 3 things you have to do. You have to initialize or give your loop control variable an initial value. You have to test it to make sure that this is true. And you have to eventually change it. Now, 2 things. First of all, if you never change this, so if I don't have this line in there, then the loop control variable is always going to be equal to 1. I've set up a condition that's known as an infinite loop. So what's going to print then is 1 space, 1 space, 1 space, 1 space, 1 space, and it'll technically print forever. So you must change the value. Second, this is called a pretest loop. That means you test it before you get into the loop. What does that mean? What if I did this and made this 11? Guess what? I would never go into this because 11 is not less than or equal to 10. So when you put this here, when you put the test at the beginning like this, when you put the test at the beginning, it's called a pretest. Well, I'll tell you what, let me copy all this. Just going to put that there so we've got a little delimiter between those, and I'm going to put it in there again. Why am I doing that? Because I want to show you another kind of loop. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to put in here the word do. All right, and now I'm going to put in this. And this is the only time you must put a semicolon in there. All right, so why am I showing you this? I mean, why should you care, etc.? This is called a do while loop, not a while loop, but a do while loop. This is what's referred to as a post test loop. You always go through this one time. Why? Because you don't check the value until you get down to the bottom. So even if this was 11, you would print out here 11 in a space. All right. So which one of these should you use? You should use the one you're most comfortable with. I'll use both as we go on in here. I will use both. But you see, again, we initialize, we change, and we test. We're doing the same thing. The only difference that's in here, the only difference between these two is where we are putting our test for our loop. If we put the test at the beginning, it's a while loop or a pretest while loop. If we put the test at the end, it is a do while loop or a post-test do while loop. All right. Now, just going to quickly show you another way that's very often done for this. It's another pretest loop, but it's shorter. So let me I'll just grab this and we'll make some changes. Now, in here, guess what? You do the initializing, the testing, and the changing all in the same line. So I'm going to write in here for int LCV equal 1. There's our initializing. LCV less than or equal to 10. That's our testing. LCV equals LCV plus 1. There's our changing. So we don't need this anymore. That's gone. All right. We do come in here and let's take this string here and let's declare that above our loop. We don't need this. And all we have to do is that. And then when we're done, we write it out. Just like that. You can see when you look at this, this results in less code. All right, this is another pretest loop. All right, because if I said it's equal to 11 and do this while it's less than or equal to 10, it would skip this. Now, do I expect you to remember all that? Of course not. You're going to see it again next week. But the faster I can introduce this stuff to you, the more natural, hopefully, it will become. So when I save this at the end, I'll add this out there so you have that if you have an interest in looking at it. All right, so going back to our program, we're going to put two things in here. The first is I'm going to create a Boolean variable. Hopefully you remember that with a Boolean variable, it must be either true or false. It must be one or the other. So I'm going to create a variable, and we could call it whatever we wanted to. You know, run program again, do it again, or whatever. I'm going to just call it keep going. And I'm going to set it equal to true. All right. That is also known right there as a flag. A Boolean variable is also known as a flag. It's got other names. And believe it or not, when we get into chapter 4 next week, or really tomorrow, we're going to talk more about Boolean variables. All right, we're going to talk about all the different types of variables that are available in C#. All right, so I'm going to put in here this while, keep going. And I did mention this to you a while back, but this is a shortcut. This is the same thing as if I said, while keep going equal true. You can use that. It doesn't put that in, but this is a shortcut for it. If you put an exclamation point before that, that's the same thing as saying, while keep going equal false. Well, we don't want it to be false. We want it to be true. This is going to allow us to run the program again and again and again. I mean, because if I want to run this and test it, it's kind of poor that I have to run the program all over again, then run the program again, then run the program again. Now I won't have to do that. All right. So what's going to happen is I am going to use this in here, that static system.console. Now I'm going to put in about, I don't know, 9 lines of code, and I'm going to get 8 errors. Why? Because I'm going to be calling routines that I haven't written yet. So this won't give me an error. This will clear. So I'm always going to start with a clear screen. Then I'm going to type input first name, and I get an error because we don't have a routine called input first name. Then input last name. Then input hours. Then input rate. Then calculate gross pay. Then update totals. Then print, and I want to print the individual stuff. So I'm going to print here the I'll just call it IND for individual. Stats or statistics. Then we're going to say keep going equal run program again. Now, you may understand what I'm about to say, you may not. Each one of these that's in here, everything that's got a red squiggly under it, those are all calls to different routines. Because of the fact that none of those routines have been written yet, they're not in my code down here anyplace. That's why I'm getting the errors I'm getting. And in fact, if I put my mouse over it, it says the name input first name does not exist in the current context. All right. So what I'll do is, other than the first one here, I'm going to highlight the rest of them and I'm going to comment them out. All right. So they're not giving me errors anymore. And when I get done with this one, I'll uncomment this and then write that one. All right. So the first thing I want to do in here is I want to come in and I want to input first name. All right. So I want to do that outside of this routine here. Okay. And all I'm trying to do in here is to print the first name. Okay. And since this is dealing directly again with main, I have to use the word static. So static void, because it won't return anything. Input first name. And you'll notice as soon as I do that, my error here goes away. There's no code in here. If I run the program right now, it's not going to do a flipping thing. Nothing. All right. So I'm going to come in here, and this will be written a little bit differently than what you've seen before. It's very short. It's about 5 or 6 lines, but I'll go over all of it when we get done. So I'm going to put a write statement here that says, please input first name. We'll put a tab there. All right. And now we can say first equal read line. We don't have to do any parsing like we did the other day. We don't have to do any of that because it's already a string. We set up here that first was a string. Okay. The only thing we want to do is we want to validate here that first name was not empty. So validate that first name is not empty. All right. So I'm going to say if first dot trim equal nothing, then it is empty. All right. That is checking. And if it is empty, I want to do a write line here that says error in input please try again. Okay, I mean, you can put any message there you want, all right? But guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to call this routine again. So I'm going to put in here, input, first name. All right. Now, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen when we do all this, but I am going to come here and put in a read line just in case we need it. All right. Now I'm going to save the program and run it. And then we'll go back and look at this particular routine. All right. So please input first name. If I leave it blank, which I'll do right now, error in input, please try again. All right. Please input first name. If I put in my first name and hit enter, all right, the program's done. There's nothing else to do. But I did validate that indeed, all right, I did validate that indeed it checked to make sure there was a first name there. That's all I cared about in here, in this routine. All right, so that's this routine. And guess what? This routine is exactly the same for the last name, except I have to change first name to last name. So I'm going to copy it so you don't have to watch me type and paste, and I'll change this to input last name. Please input last name. Validate that last name is not empty. So if last dot trim error in input, please try again. All right. Input last name. Now, one thing, and I didn't even think of this before, but I want to show you something. Every time there's an error, I'm going to put this same message in here. Error in input, try again. Error in input, try again. And it's not terrible because there's only 4 things that I'm inputting in here. All right. But if I wanted to, I could also do this. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to come up here where we have our constants. And I'm going to add another one. Const string. And let's call it ERRMSG, error message, equal. And now I can put that in there. That means I'm only putting it in there once. And if I do decide later, if I decide that I want to have a different error message, I just have to change it in one place. All right. Then when I print it out in here, when there is an error, all right, now I can say ERRMSG. Okay. And the same thing here. All right. So in both these cases, I'm telling you to either input a first name or input a last name. And then you are reading it in here and you're reading it in, and that one should be last. Shame on me for missing that one. All right. And then we're checking. Trim, what it does, and I don't know if I've explained this to you before or not, but let's go over it right now. Let's imagine that for some reason, the person put this in there, space, 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 hello, space, space, space. What trim does is it removes any leading spaces and any trailing spaces from a string. But if I had done this, if I'd have said, hello there, it doesn't remove anything. It's only leading spaces at the beginning or trailing spaces at the end. If I've got other spaces, they don't get removed. Now, one of the reasons this was created was it used to be, and most of you have probably at one time or another filled out a form on the internet. All right. It used to be that they would say all these fields in here are mandatory. So what people would do is, like, if they didn't want to give, let's say, their social security number, they'd hit the space bar. So there was something in there. And if you didn't check for this, it said, oh, there's something in there. It would take that. So trim removes any leading spaces and any trailing spaces. So if I had to put in there, instead of Jeff like I did, if I put in space, space, Jeff, space, it would remove the 2 spaces at the beginning and the 1 at the end. All right. So after it trims leading and trailing spaces, if it's empty, it's going to write out that error message. And it's going to ask you, it's going to call the same routine and ask you to input it again. And we're doing the exact same thing for the last name. All right. That was why, I mean, I could really kind of go in there and just do it quickly. Now, I can undo that one and I don't get any errors. Now, hours and rate are going to be different. All right. For hours and for rate, we want it not to be empty. Second, we want it not to be non-numeric. So in other words, can't put any spaces, can't put any letters, can't put any special characters in there other than 1 decimal place or point, but you can't type in hello for hours or for rate. And hours must be between 0 and 84, and rate must be between 0 and 100. So again, they're very similar routines. So I'm going to write this one right now, and then I'm going to copy it to this one and change every time I've used hours, change it to rate. All right. Now, when I do this, I'm going to get an error because input hours doesn't exist. So let's grab this. We've got our input first name. We've got our input last name. So I'll have another static void, and we'll have input hours. And you'll notice as soon as I do that, my error is gone. All right. If I went and right now just copied this like that and put this into input rate like that, now I can also remove this. They're not doing anything right now, but they're also not going to give me any kind of error either. All right. Now, what I'm about to show you is going to be a little different than the way we've done it before. I'm showing you something that isn't explained until later in the book. The reason I'm doing it is I want to show you how we can completely validate what we're doing. So we can make sure that A, it's not empty, B, that it doesn't hold any non-numeric characters, C, that it doesn't allow any negative numbers, and D, that it doesn't allow any values that are greater than 84. That's going to be how we're validating it. All right. So when we validate it here, we just validated that last name or that first name was not empty. There's more validation that you have to do here. All right. Okay. Now, again, we could do this in 2 different ways, and you saw this yesterday. I can either use a string and read it in there and attempt to convert it, or I can do it right away. No, we're going to do it like this. I'm going to say string, hours string equals nothing. All right. And then we're going to have a new thing, a bool that we're going to call result. Now, you probably already know this, but when we come in here and we create variables that are inside of a function, these are known as local variables. They come to life here. Once we hit that curly brace, they die. These variables that we created up here, variables, they live as long as the program lives. All right. And again, you're going to hear this again and again in here, just so you know. So I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to say write. Now, let's use a little of that string interpolation that we learned yesterday. So $, enter hours between, and it was min hours and max hours. All right. And I'm going to over just a little bit so it doesn't fly off the screen. There we go. Now, what is that going to say? It's going to say enter hours between 0 and 84. That's what it should say. All right. Could we have done it without using this interpolation? Yes. We could have just said enter hours between, then I could have put a double quote there, plus min hours, another space, plus space and space, plus max hours. So there's a lot of ways this can be written. All right. So now I'm going to say this hours string is equal to read line. Now, I believe you're all bright people in here. So when I say this, I'm hoping at least it makes sense. This is a string. All right. That means that when you do a read line, what you're reading in is a string. Even if I put in 40, it's not the number 40, it's the string 40. All right. So when you enter anything from the keyboard, anything that you enter, it automatically goes in as a string. All right. So now we're going to go and try to parse it, but we're not going to use the decimal.parse or the decimal.convert. We're going to use something similar to it. All right. So I'm going to say here, attempt to convert HRSSTR to a decimal. Okay. And it's going to look a little weird. So that literally in the rest of this routine, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 more lines. Let me write them. We'll go over them, and then it'll be almost time for a break then. So I'm going to say this. That's the whole routine. Let me move this down so we can see every bit of it here. All right. Now, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to say, does that totally make sense? But I am going to go over it all right now. And my hope is that at least you can kind of follow what I'm trying to say here. All right. So we're creating a string variable there that I'm calling hours str, short for hours string. You could call that anything you want. This is a Boolean variable, which again means it's going to be true or false. Okay. And we're going to run this command in just a second. And if it's true, we're going to skip all this. And if it's false, we're going to go in here and say that it was an error. So we're telling the person, all right, enter hours between 0 and 84. Then we're reading in whatever they enter from the keyboard. All right. Then we're attempting to convert that to a decimal. Notice we didn't say dot parse. We said dot try parse. So in English, what this means is try to take this and parse it into a decimal. If you can, put the output into something called hours. I want to say it one more time. All right. What we're trying to do right here is we are attempting to take this string that we put in and we're attempting to parse it or convert it into a number, a decimal number. If we can, we're taking the output and we're putting it into hours and we'll return true. If we cannot, if either we left it empty or we put some kind of non-numeric character in there, it'll return false. So if one of those two things happened and it was false, or we put in a number that was less than 0, or we put in a number greater than 84, we're going to write that same error message and ask them to do it again. All right. Now, we're going to take a break in just a second, but first I want to save this. All right. And it's not all written yet, so please remember that. If I, okay, and I do it again, notice it keeps asking me. So I'll put in my first name. Now it asks for my last name. Again, if I leave it blank, so now I'll put in my last name. Now notice, and I should have put a couple blanks in there, but that's okay. It says enter hours between 0 and 84. So that 0 and 84, it did recognize this. If I put in nothing and I hit enter, the program doesn't break. That's what it has been doing. It's been breaking. Now it doesn't break. If I put in something negative, error and input, try again. If I put in something more than 84, error and input, try again. If I put in 40, it's fat and happy, and it's just going to ask me to put in another name. Now, one last thing I want to do, and then we're taking our break, and that is they should have had a \n there for entering the hours. All right. Now, we're going to take a break. Just so you see me do this, though, I'm going to grab everything that we put in here in input hours right there, all the guts, so to speak. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in here. Now I have to change everything that's referring in here to hours. I have to change it to rate. I'll do that after the break. It is 9:01. Let's come back at 9:15, please. I'll be right back. All right, it's 9:15, so I'm going to continue on. You may have seen this if you looked at the screen before we started, but I got an email. Oh, I don't know where I put it. Well, I think I might have accidentally deleted it. Did I delete it? All right, well, I'll have to find it during the break. But there is going to be a job fair at the St. Louis campus about 4 weeks from Friday. Now, should you go to that? Actually, I'd recommend you probably don't, because you're either in your first semester or you're in your second semester. The reason, though, that I'm telling it to you is the fact that twice a year, each of the Rankin campuses has a job fair. So if it's a year from now and you're either in your fourth class or you're in your third class, you might want to go out to the job fair. They've changed it over the years. It used to be they had everything in the automotive building at the St. Louis campus, which is a huge building, and they had 500 companies, up to 500 there. Now they've broken it down into different areas, and they have different areas on different days. So on that, I think it's the 19th. Like I said, I'll find the email, but there'll be probably around 50 companies that are looking for IT people, both hardware and software people. Okay, so let's go on. I'm going to change. I copied everything that was in my input hours into my input rate. So I'm going to change this to rate. Oops. Rate STR, which means that everywhere I've used it before, I'm going to get an error. So let me just change those. All right, now I want to say enter rate between min H rate and max H rate. All right, rate equal, and read it in. Attempt to convert rate STR to a decimal. So again, try to take rate and put it into rate. If it didn't work, or if rate is less than min H rate, or if rate is greater than max H rate, again, we will print out an error and call input rate. So right now we've got all of our inputs. All these should be working. But again, the system is expecting, in the best case scenario, that I'm going to come in here and do this. Oh, I still didn't move that over, I guess. So all right, so it is working. It is handling all that stuff. Now where it's saying that, where is it? Input, enter hours. There, right there. That should have a \T in it, and that means that so should this. All right. So what are we doing next according to our list here? And that is calculating the gross pay. Again, I'll get an error now because we don't have anything written yet called calculate gross pay. So let's write that one next. I like to really move my stuff down, like you can see right here. You can throw your stuff in any order you want, but I try to put it in a specific order because to me it makes sense and it's easier when I'm looking for things. All right. So I'm going to have static void calculate gross pay. Again, as soon as I put that in, the error is now gone, but we still have to calculate our gross pay. So we'll do that here. Now, First one I'll put in here is straight time check. In other words, hours less than or equal to 40, not 400. So if hours less than or equal to max non-OT, that means you worked 40 or less hours, then your gross is equal to your hours times your rate. That's it. That's a simple check. Else, all right, so if it's an else in here, I'll just put it in like this. You work some overtime. We don't know yet how much, but you work some overtime. All right. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to say, and you can do this in a lot of different ways. I'm just telling you right now, you can do this, what I'm about to do, in a lot of different ways. All right. Does that matter? Not at all, but I'm just trying to show you that, again, you can do this in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to say gross equal, and now I'm going to say max non-OT times rate. And what is that? That is your straight time. That's the 40 hours you worked. So this right here, I'm just going to put straight time. All right. And that shouldn't be a times, that should be a plus. So I want to add to that. All right. I want to add to that hours minus max non-OT times rate times OT rate. Now, sometimes when I explain stuff like this, people don't get it. So let's give a real simple example, and let's put it down below here. Not up above, we'll put it down here. So let's say your hours were 40 and your rate was 10. Well, is hours less than or equal to 40? Yes. So the gross is going to be the hours times the rate. Now, that's pretty simple when you think about it. But if it's 50, now is hours less than or equal to 40? No. So you're going to do the else. So their first 40 hours is their regular pay. So that's going to be 40 times 10. Then it's going to be 50 minus 40, which is 10 hours. That's how much overtime they worked, times their rate, times 1.5. So for instance, in this case, right here, this would be equal to 40 times 10, or 400. And then we have to add to that 50 minus 40, minus 40 times 10 times 1.5. So in other words, that's going to be 10 times 10, which would be 100, times 1.5, which is going to give you 150. So they make 50, other than the regular pay, which would have been 500 if it was all straight time, they're making $50 in overtime pay. All right. And literally that's the whole routine. That should handle anything. We don't have to check in here for hours because we already did. We don't have to check in here for rate because we already did. We don't get to this point right here unless all this other stuff is passed. All right, that's pretty nice. So the next thing we want to do is we want to update our totals. And there's only 3 lines in here. We want to add 1 to our total employees. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is something that's in the next chapter, but I just would like you to see it. You can write any of these 4 things. Total EMPS equal total EMPS plus 1. Totally fine to do that. Or you can write total EMPS plus equal 1. It's a shortcut. Or if you're only adding or subtracting one from a variable, you can either say plus plus total emps, or you can say total emps plus plus. All four of those will add one to your total employees. All four of them will add one to it. All right. I'm going to leave these two out because we're going to talk about those next time. All right. I'll even leave this out because we'll talk about that next time. So even though this is the most typing, we'll do it like this. Now, I'm going to say total gross equals total gross plus gross. Remember that total gross is what I called an accumulator. It's accumulating all of the gross pays. All right, so now I've got all of the gross pays and I've got my total number of employees. So I can come in here now and say AVG gross equal total gross divided by total employees. That's the whole update totals. All right, that's going to update my total number of employees. That's going to update my total gross. That's going to update my average gross. All right, so all those are now done. Now, one thing about this, you may or may not have noticed, next we're going to print the individual stats. Then we're going to ask the user if she or he wants to keep going. We're never printing out in here our final statistics. We don't have that in here. Well, that's because we don't want to do it while we're in the loop. We want to print the final stuff out when we're all done. So here I'll call print final stats. Now it's going to give me an error because it hasn't been written yet. So for now, let's just comment that out. All right, and let's write this one, print IND stats. Literally, what this is going to do is it's going to print out all of the stats, all of the stuff for an individual employee. All right. There's many ways we can do this. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to create a variable called output str, output string. And first I'll set it equal to, and I'm going to use that string interpolation that we used before. We don't have to do that, but you might as well get used to at least seeing it if you're not going to use it. So that'll print out the first name right there. All right. And I'm going to just copy that and change first to last. All right. Then I'm going to copy it again. And I don't want to say this. I'm going to say hours worked. And we'll put, let's see, that's spelled wrong. Hours worked. All right. And this will be hours. Now, when we do this, we can format it too. Like when you did with a toString, I can say colon N2. And that'll put it in there just like that. That's what I want. All right. Now I'm going to copy this line because hourly rate is similar. So this will be hourly rate. And this will be rate. Now that's a number, so I can put that's a dollar and cents, so I'm going to put a C in there. All right, and then I can do my gross. All right. Now, this will work just fine, except for one thing, and that is I didn't put any line breaks in here. So this is all going to print on the same line, which is going to look terrible. So at the beginning of this, I'm going to put a \n, which is like if I'd hit the enter key. So I'm going to put one of those in each one of these. Okay. All right. Now I've got it, but I haven't printed it out yet. So I'm going to do 2 write lines. The first one will just say, that's the second one. First one will just say individual employee stats. You could put anything you wanted in there. It doesn't matter. All right. And I'll put a blank \n right there. All right. Now I'm going to do one more write line. Output str. And I forgot my double quote. And put in a read line. Now I'm going to explain everything that's in there, but before I do, let's just run it one time. Just run it one time and make sure it's working. In fact, I'll run it twice, one with overtime and one with no overtime. I'm not going to check. We've already looked at it if we don't put in a value for first name, etc. So the hours, I'll say 40. The rate is 25. And there's all the stats. 40, $25 an hour. All right. $1,000. That looks correct. And let's do it one more time. Let's say 50 and 10. And you can see my overtime is in there. Now I have to play with this and put some more tabs in here so these all line up. That's not that big of a thing. All right. But now I have everything, okay, for an individual employee. So I have to ask now the user, right now it's just running it again. I'm never asking the user, do you want to run this program again? I'm never asking him or her that. So I'm going to ask them that. In other words, I'm going to leave it up to them as to whether or not, okay, they want to run the program again. And I want you to see something here. Every one of these has just the name of a routine with parentheses. The first one is a system routine called clear. Then we've got all of our inputs, then our calculate gross pay, then our update totals, then our print IND stats. All of them are of type void, meaning none of these return anything. This one's different. Run program again is going to return a value that's going to go into keep going. Since keep going is a Boolean, that means that run program again must return either true or false. It must do that. All right. So let's come down and write that one. This won't, what I'm saying is this won't be a static void. This will be a static bool because it has to return true or false. Now, again, there are multiple ways of running this. I'm going to show you what I consider to be the easiest way, and I'll explain everything. It's only about 7 or 8 to 10 lines. And that's it. So let's go over every line of this because there's some new stuff in here. All right. RETVAL is just something, it stands for return value. All right. And I use RETVAL a lot in my programs. You could call it anything. You can't call it return because return is a key word. All right. But I'm assuming that this is going to return true. All right. I ask the user, do you want to run the program again? And I'm telling them to enter a Y or an N. But human beings don't always read instructions. All right. So they might type in the word yes, the word no, or something else. Or maybe they'll just hit enter. All right. And that's going to break the program right now if I just hit enter, just so you know that. But what I'm saying is whatever they put in here, turn it into uppercase. So in other words, if they were to come in here and let's just say they came in here and they typed in, yes, I want to run it again. That'll change it to this. All right. It's going to take everything that they typed in and put it into uppercase. All right. That's what this is doing here. Then this is saying, I want just the first character. So if they type in yes, I want just the Y, which is now an uppercase Y. And if they typed in no, I want just the uppercase N. And here we're saying if that first character is not an uppercase Y, we want to set our return value to false. So we will return false, meaning we don't want to do the program again. Now, I want to show you something here. I want to show you because I'm going to break the program. All right. So now it says, do you want to run the program again? It's expecting something to be put in there. If I put in nothing, I get an error. And look at that, index out of bounds. What the heck is that? That won't make a lot of sense until chapter 8. But in literally what it means is it's trying to take blank and put blank into uppercase. And it doesn't know how to do that. It doesn't make any sense to the system. So I could come in here and just put in an if that says if again dot trim equals nothing. You've seen this before. All right. I can just come in here and say, I'll just say return false. In other words, I don't want to do it again. All right. That will fix it. So now if I come in and run the same program again, and I just hit enter, the program stops running. All right. So we ask the user, do you want to run the program again? We're expecting them or asking them to enter a Y or an N. We take whatever they put in here and we convert it into uppercase. All right. So there's a lot of ways that we could do this. I could have just done the read line there and send it into uppercase down here. There's a whole bunch of ways this can be done. But we're saying if you left it blank, just return false. Otherwise, grab that first character. If that first character is not an uppercase Y, we don't want to do it again. So either when it comes through here, we're going to run this, we're going to put in nothing, which means this is going to be true and we'll return false and we'll skip all this. Or let's say we typed in an N right there. Well, we skip this. We come down to here. Let's say we typed in no. So we'll grab just the N, which we uppercased. That's not equal to Y. So we'll again set that to false. If we say yes or yes indeed or whatever, it will be a Y. So it'll return. All right. Now, the only thing I want to do in here, and it's not that big a thing, but where is it? I think we want a \T here. Oops. And I think we want one here too. All right, so the only thing now that's left in our program is this, print our final statistics. And again, we're doing that outside of the loop, which means this is going to run when we tell the user we don't want to run the program anymore. All right, and this is only a few lines long, so we're going to put that in just a second. All right. Again, I'm going to clear. You don't have to, but I am. And I'm going to do it very similarly to what I did up here. So I'm just going to grab these 3 lines again and modify them. I don't think you should have to watch me type. So this is going to say total employees. And that is total EMPs. All right. This will say total gross pay. And again, we could have put other stuff in here as well. This is just what I decided on. Total gross, and we'll do a :C to make it currency. And finally, we'll do average. All right. And we'll put in here AVG gross. And again, this will be currency. All right. That should be everything unless I've screwed up someplace. Oh, except we better print it out. So right line. And I'll put in here final employee stats. And we'll do a read line here. That should be everything. All right, so let's run it. Got to move that over 1. Well, that's too much, but that's still okay. All right, so that's everything for me, including my overtime. Do I want to run it again? Now, remember, the total gross pay right now is 20. I'm going to say yes. All right. So she made 1,000. I had 2,200. Now, when it says, do you want to run it again? No. All right. So again, you see, I have to play with this a little bit. 3,200, which was my 2,200 plus her 1,000 divided by 2 is 1,600. So everything is working. The only thing I have to do is pretty it up a little bit. All right. So again, when I run this, okay, so one more tab there. Oops. And 1, 2. Okay, let's do it like this. Okay. Still didn't do it enough. Okay. Nope. Okay, I put them in the wrong place. I'll play with that before I throw it out there on the system and line everything up like little soldiers, as they say. But hopefully you can look through this now. And again, I'm not saying it 100% makes sense. This is much, much harder than what you have on your test. All right. But I'm trying to introduce things in here so that you're not totally overwhelmed. All right. And one of the things that I mentioned, let me go back and show you this. All right. We're going to go over chapter 4 tomorrow, how to work with numeric and string data. So the different data types that we have, all of our numeric types and our string types, how to convert between types. So again, they'll say stuff like this, try parse. that I just mentioned to you. Then we'll go over chapter 5. And the chapter 5 is going to be on if statements, loops, and something called a switch statement. You're going to have a lot thrown at you tomorrow. So I figured that maybe it'd be a little easier to go over and explain some of it today so that you're not hopefully totally overwhelmed tomorrow. All right, that was my plan at least. All right, so I'm going to do a file, save all on here, and all I want to grab, okay, I want to grab this, and I'm going to use the same variables and stuff in here in the other one. But for now, let me grab this. And now let's go in, right mouse click on our solution, add a new project. This will be a Windows Forms app. The other one was Payroll Console. I could call this Payroll Windows Forms app, but I just usually call mine GUI because it's a graphical user interface program. All right, let me go to the code here. And again, we don't need any of this stuff, but you can leave it in. I'm going to paste in that same comment. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab the constants that I had. All right, and the variables that we had. And I'm going to keep all those. Right? So I'll put those right there. All right, we haven't put any code in yet or we haven't put in any of our GUI yet, so we'll do that next. All right, that's right here. I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit. All right, and sometimes you just eyeball stuff, and then later you might want to change it, then you change it. All right, and I'm going to start by putting in the 3 buttons we usually have in here. So I'm going to put those down at the bottom. Move this over as well. There we go. All right, and since they're each taking up about 1/3, I can make them nice and big. Should be okay. So these are going to be my what? These will be my calculate button, my clear button, and my exit button. All right. Now I want to put in first name, last name, hours, rate, and gross pay. So I'm going to put 5 labels over here and 5 text boxes. And I'll start by putting in the labels. All right, now I'm going to put in my 5 text boxes. All right, now I also want 3 labels and text boxes over here for my total number of employees, for my total gross pay, and my average gross pay. So I'm just going to grab this and copy it and then paste it and move it pretty much where I want it to go. All right. Too bad. It's not great, but it's not bad either. All right. Now let's go in and change the font size on everything. And again, I mentioned this before. I always come in here and click on the ellipse or ellipsis and bring this up. You can also click on the plus sign here and set each one individually. I don't see any advantage to doing that, but if you want to, it sure as heck doesn't hurt. So 20 bold and Arial. All right, so all that's done now. So my interface basically right now is pretty much done. All right. Now, what I should have done and didn't do because I'm stupid is I should have renamed this. And watch again, you've seen this before. When I rename this now, it probably is going to give me an error. I'll just call it FRM Payroll. And yes, and then it gives me that. I'm not sure why. I didn't look it up. But if I change it back again to form 1, okay, it'll come back. And there's a discrepancy in there. Oh boy, it came back, but I lost everything. Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, you get to see me build it again. Sorry about that. I wonder if I do this, if this will work. I'm just going to try something here just so you see it. I'm going to do a Control X to remove everything. Now I'm going to see if it lets me change the name. It still didn't. All right, it doesn't like that either. Now I'm going to paste everything. Oh, come on. You are kidding me. Paste. There we go. All right. All right. Well, all right. So my interface is built. All right. And these could all be a little bit wider, but that's not bad the way it is. If it looks bad, I'll change it later. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to align them. And then these and align them. Then these and align them. And then these and align them. All right, I might as well lock my interface into place now. All right, and then just start creating stuff. All right, in other words, this is all my individual stuff. So first name, last name, hours, rate, and gross. All right. I just called it hours. We could have called it hours worked as well. It doesn't really matter. Same thing with the rate. Right, then our buttons. As I like to do, I'm going to come in here and just check real quick, other than the form, and see if I forgot to. Oops, that wasn't good. Let's go back and view our properties window again. Nice view properties window. There we go. Make sure I didn't not misnaming anything. Not naming. Okay, looks okay to me. I'm going to come over to here and immediately set my start position to center screen. And I will set my accept and cancel buttons. All right, and then let's set our tab order. Now, this field right here, the gross, the total employees, the total gross, and the average gross, those are all going to be read-only. All right, they're set by the program. So my tab order will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then all the way down here and all the way down here. So view tab order 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Again, view tab order. All right, let's quickly run it. Just make sure it looks, whoops, I didn't set my startup project. So there it is. Okay, none of these work, of course, because we haven't put any code in yet. So let's do that next. Just about calculate gross pay. And again, it hasn't been written yet. So that'll get that error out of there. All right. This will be clear form. And the last one will be that exit program or not. That I'm going to copy in because I've got it saved. It's here someplace. Here it is. All right, so that's done. The clear is right here. So again, what do we want to clear? We don't want to clear any of these. Those are our final totals. But we want to clear all 5 of these, including the gross, and then set the focus back onto the first name. Right, so that should take care of all that. Let's save it and run it, make sure. Exit, no, good. We'll do the rest later. So here, Okay, looks like it's all working. Now, we're going to start writing the other one. I'll go till about 10:10, then we'll take another break. I wrote this in a similar manner to what we did before, but not identical. All right, I used that keep going variable, but when you write code, all right, when you're writing for a GUI, you do write things differently than when you're writing for a non-GUI. It's just that's the way it is. So that's in here in calculate gross pay. All right. All right. I prefaced all the stuff I'm going to check this time with the word validate. Didn't have to do that, but I did. That's just how I did it. All right. So I'm going to come down here. And since validate first name is going to be stuffed into a Boolean variable, that means that validate first name has to return a bool. All right. I'm getting the error because I'm not returning anything yet, a true or a false. We'll fix that in just a minute. All right. Down at the bottom, at the very bottom of my program, okay, I'm going to put, you've seen me write this kind of thing before, but I'm going to actually write two of these. I'm going to write private void show error message. That's going to take in a string with my message and a string with the title. All right. You've seen this before, so. All right, it even filled it all in for me. That's fine. And I'm going to write another one that's going to look just like it, but instead of error, I want it to say information. Now, I could do this with just one routine, but I just decided to write it as two routines. So this is called show info message. And the only difference is in here, it says information. And again, didn't have to do it like that. But I want to be able to send, again, error messages or information type of messages, all right, depending on what it is I'm doing. All right, so let's come in here and let's write validate first name. All right, you've seen this in the previous one. I've got a bool here called retval. And it's first name, not last name, sorry. Gotta change it to first, but make that first, not last. All right, and then I want to put the focus there, so. And return. Val is, oops, is false, and return red val. Now, this is similar, but not identical to what we did before. All right, before, if you remember, we went in and we're still going to do that kind of stuff, but before we were checking not TXT, not a text box. We were checking whatever our input was after we did a write and a read line. All right, plus there's no show error message with a message box that doesn't exist inside of a console app, so I've got it here. All right, now we should be able to test this. So if I leave that blank, all right, invalid first name inputted. First name cannot be blank. All right. Now, what's going to be a little different here is the following. Okay. Now I've got here bool keep going. All right. Well, that's going to return true or false. That should make sense. And I'm going to say if keep going, meaning that I put in a valid first name. Now I want to say keep going equals, equals validate last name. All right. And if it didn't return true, I want to just get the heck out of there. So else return. Now this hasn't been written yet. We'll write that in just a second. All right. In fact, it's the same as this one, except I have to change every instance of first to last. All right. So I'll change this one. It's the second one. Yep. Last. Okay. So this one is invalidate last name. All right, good. You've already seen if I put nothing here, you get the error message, first name cannot be blank. So now if I put in something here, now I get invalid last name. Last name cannot be blank. If I do put in something here, not going to do anymore because I haven't put that code in yet. So the next thing we have to do is validate the hours, and it's going to be similar to what we did. All right, similar to what we did on the console app. All right, not identical, but it'll be very similar. Okay, so again, I come down here. If keep going, then I can say keep going. Don't know why I've got two parentheses there, but I do. So keep going equal validate hours, which we'll write in a second. Otherwise, again, just return. I'm done. So let's write validate hours. I'll put it right after validate last name. Again, it's another private bool. And again, I'm going to have a ret val in here. But I'm also going to have result like I did before. And just like before, I'm going to say result equals, just like we did before, decimal dot, and again, we can put decimal with a big D or a little d, dot try parse, and it's now txt hours dot text. And we're still going to put out into hours, just like we did before. All right. This is going to look virtually identical to what we did before. So if not result, if not result, or hours less than min hours, or hours greater than max hours. All right, so if one of those is true, all right, we're going to call our show error message again. And it'll say empty or out of range hours. And again, this you could change that to anything that you think was appropriate. So invalid hours inputted. All right. Now there was something in there, or there could have been. So we don't want to just say text hours focus. We do want to do that. But before we do that, we want to clear out whatever was in there. So txt hours dot text equal nothing. All right. And finally, we want to say ret val equal false. And then down here, return ret val. All right. Now we should be able to test for that. Now I'm going to run it. And I'm not going to test again for first name and last name. You've seen that. So now there's nothing. Invalid hours inputted. Remember, it was 0 to 84. So let's try -1. Doesn't take that. And it clears it, puts the cursor there. Let's try 84.1. That's out of range as well. And again, if we do put in there 50, all right, it works because we haven't done the thing yet for rate. We haven't done the thing yet for gross. Let's do the rate and then we'll take a break. So I'm going to grab this validate that we just did for validate hours, grab the whole thing, copy it to the clipboard, hit enter, paste it in, and change that to validate rate. And come in here and start changing all these. So it's txt rate, and that's rate, and that's rate, and that's rate, and that's min H rate, and that's max H rate. All right, that's rate, that's rate, that's rate, and that's rate. It should be everything. Now, again, we didn't call it yet, so we're down to here. And again, if keep going equals validate rate. All right, whoops. Else return. All right, so we should be able to check all 4 of the fields. So again, if I put in, now you've seen this, but if I left that, all right, out of range rate, invalid rate inputted. Same thing. This also handles non-numeric input. All right, so all that is working. I'll put in here 40, doesn't matter. Click calculate. Okay, why? Because we are up to where we want to calculate our gross pay. All right, we're going to go on a break in just a second, but just so you see this, now I'm going to say if keep going, I am going to call calculate gross pay, which hasn't been written yet, else return. I'm going to put my curlies in there because it's a good idea to do that. All right, and then as soon as we come back from the break, I am going to write where are we here? Growth here. So I'm going to go down to here. This is not going to be right here. I don't have to call keep going. I've already got all my fields are valid. So this is not going to return anything. So this one is going to be a private void calculate gross pay. Just like that. All right, calculate gross pay. What doesn't it like? Defines a member, call that with the same thing. Calculate gross pay, yeah. Oh, I call that the same as here. Okay, I can't name two things the same thing. So I'll just call this calculate gross. And I'll call this one calculate gross. Okay, and as of right now, I have no errors. Okay, it is 10:15. Let's take 10 minutes, please, and come back at 10:25. Thanks. Be right back. All right, so I'm going to continue on. One thing before we get going, and I found that email, and it just says she screwed up here. That should have said February, but it doesn't. It says the St. Louis job fairs in the week of February 12th, 2024, and the last one is the IT division, and IT includes both hardware and AWD or software. All right. If for some reason you have a desire to go to that, you are welcome to go and bring a resume. Probably if you tell them I'm in my first class, they're not going to give you a lot, a lot of attention. How's that? But at least a year from now, I would think that you'd want to go out there and take a look. All right, so that's the first thing. Now, I also want to show you, this is the one we wrote before. So this is the console program. And when we got to figuring out our gross pay, I'm going to take everything that we put in our gross pay, I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it into here. Again, logic's logic. Now, I do have to come in here and say txt gross dot text equal, and I can either say gross dot to string, all right, like this, and give it a C, which is totally fine to do, or I can say txt gross dot text equal, and I can use string interpolation. All right, you can see the string interpolation means that you've got a little less typing to do, but they do the same thing. So what I'll do here is just that. I'll comment one of them out. Let's see if everything is working. We haven't done our final totals yet, so those won't work. All right, that's good, 1,000. And our overtime is working too. Okay, that's good. So we all that's left in here then, the clear works, but we've got to figure these out right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do, just so you see it, is way up here. All right, we said if keep going, well, let's just write a couple comments in here just so you see this. Now I can put a comment here that says validate last name, but to me it's kind of redundant. All right, so I'm going to put here just a comment that says validate first name returned true. And then down here, I'm going to say validate first name returned false. Here we'll say validate last name returned true. And here we'll say validate last name returned false. All right. First, last, validate hours. Okay, so this will say validate hours return true. And this one will be validate hours return false. All right, and finally this one will be validate rate return true. And technically, I'm at the bottom. I can put this in else return, but it's going to return anyway. It doesn't matter if I put it in or not. There, so validate rate returned false. Now, not only do I want to calculate the gross here, and that is what I do want to do, but I also want to calculate my totals. So I'm also going to call here calculate total stats. And the only reason I waited and I wanted to show you this is, again, remember, if all you have in here is one line of code, you don't need the curly braces. I recommend always putting them in. But if you've got multiple lines like this, you must put in the curly braces, or in this case, you're going to end up with an error. All right. So right underneath the calculate gross pay, I'm going to come down here, calculate total stats. And again, I'm going to go back to here. I can grab all this stuff. It's the same code. All right. No errors. Okay, I'm still doing everything, but I need now to fill up the text boxes. So txt total emps dot text equal. All right, and again, I can either say total emps dot toString, or I can use string interpolation. There's no special formatting I have to do on that one. So and then total gross. And that'll be C for currency, because it is a currency figure. And then finally, the average gross. Again, to currency. Okay, let's see if it all works. Now, when you're testing this, and I've said this before, just test it with simple stuff. So I'm gonna assume I'm gonna leave these in here. So $1,001, yeah, that makes sense. Now I could clear this every time, but I'm just gonna leave this in here. I'll tell you what, I'll put in my wife and 50 and 10. So that should be 550. This should be 1550 and what, 775, I believe. And it is. All right. All right. And so on and so on and so on. So hopefully that all made sense to you. But, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is, again, logic is logic. The only difference, or the main difference, between a C# console program and a C# GUI program or Windows app is the Windows app has controls on it, but the logic is the same. Now, I'll tell you this, you might laugh, you might think it's stupid, but I'll just tell you quickly anyway. Years ago, I was teaching at another college, and I said, programmers are paid for logic and understanding how to write things. I said, not for making pretty interfaces. You could say, yeah, yours is ugly. Okay, I can live with that. All right. But one thing I said in class was, I could take a monkey and teach a monkey in a half an hour, probably, how to do an interface. All right. So, of course, one student went to my boss and said, I called all of them monkeys, which, of course, I didn't do. All right. But so the next day I invited my teacher to come down there and I said, no, one of you said that I called you all monkeys. I don't think I did. So I'm going to leave, and why don't you go and tell my instructor or tell my boss that. I left, shut the door and left. He came out a half hour later and he said, nobody had any complaints, and nobody said they said that. So whatever. So I can still come in, I can click clear, or I can hit my escape key. That's all clearing. All right, I can put in something. I can hit enter, and that's working. So everything, as far as I can tell in here, is working. I can exit, no, or exit, yes. So everything in here is working now, to my knowledge. All right. So you now have in here Payroll Console and Payroll GUI. I'm going to do a file, save all. I'm going to close this. All right. I'm going to come back and open up my C# Payroll again. All right. And I'm going to open up what we had in here before. Okay. So that's all been set up. So now I can come in here and say, I'm going to put in a command and then clear git add dot. Now, if you get a message like this, all right, what it's saying is, in some programming, or in some operating systems, okay, it puts in, when you hit the enter key, it puts in what's called a line feed. With other ones, it puts in what's called a carriage return, then a line feed. So some it's an LF and some it's a CRLF. If you get that, it's fine. It's not an error. Sometimes you might get many of these. Don't worry if you do, it doesn't hurt anything. So this says, I'm literally adding it to what's called a staging area. I'm taking all my code and I'm getting it ready. All right. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to commit it. So I'm going to say git commit. You must say -m and put a message in there, even if you just do this, which I wouldn't recommend. But I'm going to put in here Payroll Console and GUI version 01. Again, I could have put anything in there we wanted. All right, hit enter, and it's showing what it's all sending there. It's fine. All right, now I can come in and do my git push minus U origin. Again, I say master. You will probably end up saying yourselves, rather than master, you will say main. All right, it thinks about it, it spins, it does a little, went pretty fast today. So if I go back into GitHub now, and this is what was there, I copied that over, I just ran that command, and if I clear, there it is, Payroll console and GUI version 1. So now, if you do go out to here, all right, if you do go out to here, that's what I'm going to do. In fact, I'll grab that. All right, and I'm going to get out of this. It may throw me right back into GitHub. I don't know. Yeah, it did. So let me log out of GitHub. I think this will get me out of GitHub. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I think that got me out of, yeah, it did. Not GitHub. All right. So if I do paste that in, if you paste that in, it's going to get you into something like this. All right. Then what you will want to do is click code and then go down to download zip. And that will take all the code that we did today and it will put it into a zip folder for you. Then you can unzip it. Okay. So let's say, for instance, let's pretend it's tomorrow. You are taking the C# test. All right. And you come in here and you create a folder. All right. And you call it C# HOTS. All right. Or something like that. So C# HOTS. And you come in and you start up Visual Studio. All right. All right. And then you come in and let's say that you create a new project. Let's assume that the first one is a console app. I'm just making this up. All right. And you call this test 1-1. First test, first problem. And you put it in the folder. And the folder is called C# HOTS. All right. And you call the solution just HOTS, tests, whatever. It doesn't really matter. All right. So you click create. All right. So we've done all that. Now you come in here and all you're told to do is just put in a right line. I need to put my shortcut in here. All right. So you put in a right line that says C# is fun. That's not what you're doing on your test, but we're just pretending here. All right. Then underneath that, you put in read line. Okay. So it doesn't fly off the page. We run this. It says C# is fun. You hit enter, your program's done. So I'm assuming now we're done. So you've got more than one problem, but I'm just going to assume for right now you're done. All right. So you can close this and you can open up the folder. So C# HOTS. All right. Right mouse click and you'll choose Git Bash here. And just like we did before, you're going to come in here. There's no Git folder. So we start with Git init, and that brings in the folder for us. Then we say Git add dot. All right. And that brings in all the files for us. Then we say, let me make this bigger. Then we say Git commit -m, let's just say HOTS, something like that. All right. Now we've got all that stuff. Now you cannot yet say Git push -u origin master. You can't do that yet. Instead, you've got to go out and make a folder called, in this case, C# HOTS. All right, so you've got to go back out to GitHub, come in here, and either when you do this, All right, you've got to either come in and click new here or click up here and choose new, but I'll click here. Again, I don't know if you've got choose an owner or not. If you do, make sure it's you. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And it's going to be C# HOTS. It's available. So what you will want to do is make yours private. All right. I'll keep mine public, but you want yours to be private and click create repository. All right. Then once you've done all that, you can copy this second last line, the one with remote add origin in it. So I'm going to copy this, go back into here. All right, this is what we just brought. No, that's the payroll one. So let's exit and get out of that one. All right, so this is what we just did. Now we still can't do this yet. We're going to get an error. We instead, get rid of this, have to copy in that line from right here. So I'm going to copy that in. That's not the right line, Jeff. Let's try it again. All right, bring it into here, copy, then paste it in, right mouse click and choose paste, hit enter. You can always test it by saying get remote -v. That looks correct. Now you can do your get push -u origin, and yours again will probably be main. Mine is master. Hit enter. All right. And if I refresh, it should be here now. And there it is. Now, if you try that tomorrow and you say, hey, I tried it, I had nothing but problems, nothing worked. All right. And I tried emailing you and you didn't get back to me. Well, if you email me after 10 o'clock, I won't. All right. So the other thing you can do, if it's much easier, we're only going to do this for the first test or two, or first assignment or two. You can take this is our C# HOTS, right mouse click on it, choose send to and compressed, and it makes a zip folder. Then just email me that zip folder. Notice it's not going to be real big. It's only 62K. You can email stuff out till about 5 meg or 5 million bytes. All right. So what I'm hoping is tomorrow you can do it the first way, but if you have problems with it, you can do it this way. All right. Now, a couple more things here. First, and let's see if I've got where I put it. All right. This is the homework that you were assigned. There are 4 problems. All right. Write a C# console program that converts distances from miles to kilometers. I did this in class. I did not save this as a GitHub repo. You are to write this one yourselves. If you need help, or if you're totally lost, or whatever, all right, you can go and take a look at that video. Notice you're supposed to put it into a folder, call it C# homework. And these programs call them this, H101_01, 02, 03, and 04. So that's the first problem you are to do. Then second, write a console program that calculates the average grade for a student. Prompt for test scores, then display the average of the scores. That's pretty doggone easy. We actually did one yesterday or the day before that was harder than this one. We did a problem where we read in 4 test scores, then we printed out the biggest score, the smallest score, and the average. All right. We did this one in class as well. And how are you going to be graded on the test? And how are you going to be graded on the homework? Well, you're told here to create a constant named %raise. If you don't do that, you're going to lose some points. If you're told to do something on the test and you don't do it, you're going to lose some points. Those aren't threats. All right, they're not. It's just that what you're going to see on the test tomorrow is you're going to see a rubric that comes with it too, that explains how the points are basically allocated. All right. So this is another console program. Again, we did that in class. And this was a Windows Forms app, which again, we did in class. These 4 problems right here are due Sunday by midnight. All right. We're actually going to be done by probably around 11 today. So you'll have 50 minutes if you want to dig through and start working on it, etc. yourselves. You'll be able to do so. The other thing that is due, all right, is I put this out again in a GitHub repo. If you don't have it, all right, if you already have this, just zone me out for a minute. But if you don't, if I go back out here, all right, no, I don't want to create a new repo. I want to go here. I think it was called C# work, but I'm not sure. It's payroll. Yeah. It's not in there. Well, I'll have to find it. Okay. But what I put out there, and I'll look for it. I'll find it. And that was, I made a copy of this folder right here that's called, that should be it, C# work. Well, and I'll make sure I put it out there. And this has in it all of the PowerPoints for the book. It has in it the homework that we're going to be basically doing in class that's off of the Murach text, some projects from Murach, and the written tests. All right, so what I'm going to do right now with you, right now, you can either open it up yourselves, write it down, do whatever is easiest for you. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go over the answers for this first test. They're not in here. All right, I'm going to do them. So I'm going to view one page. We're not typically going to do this. Whatever it was, 10 or 11% of your grade is based on you doing these tests. And I think I'm changing it to 11%, and each test will be worth, out of that 11%, 0.5%, because there's 22 chapters. You will do all 22 of these. All right. How do you do these? Well, there's different ways, and I'm going to show you one right now that most people do. All right, number 1, a desktop application runs, not on a web server. No, that's a web application, not in a compiler. Technically, within Visual Studio is correct, but this is the right answer here on the user's computer. So most people take it like that, highlight it, then come over to home and change the color. Do something like that. All right. I need you to annotate it in some way so I know. If you say, I don't want to do that, you can also bold it like that. All right, whatever way you're most comfortable with. All right, but again, that is number 1. Number 2, which of the following is not a platform that you can use to develop Windows desktop applications? All right. This is Windows desktop applications. You have to look through the book for this, but the answer is this, because those are not desktop applications. Those are web applications. So number 1 is C. Number 2 is D. Number 3, which of the following is not a .NET programming language? All right, if I go out to .NET, okay, and I go in and I say, for example, let's just pretend for a second that I wanted to come in and add a new project. All right. Well, look at it. We've got here all languages. And when you look here, well, there's C#, there's F#, etc. All right. Now, the answer is a little confusing based on what's actually in there. All right. Because the actual answer is JavaScript. JavaScript is not a .NET language. Visual Basic is a .NET language. C# is a .NET language. F# is kind of Microsoft's answer to JavaScript. And if you say, wow, I never heard of it before, that's because it wasn't very successful. All right. Number 4. So C, D, B on the first 3. Number 4. Which of the following statements is true? All right. .NET Core is newer than the .NET Framework, but it runs only on Windows. That is not true. .NET Core is newer than .NET, and it is cross-platform. That is true. .NET Core is older than .NET Framework. No, it's not. So these you could throw out right away because it's not older. So it has to be one of these two. And one of the things about .NET Core is it's cross-platform, which means that you can create .NETs on a Windows-based machine, an Apple or Mac-based machine, or a Linux-based machine. All right, so that's number 4. Number 5, the primary components of .NET are its class libraries and, all right, you may not remember, but the term we used was CLR, which stands for Common Language Runtime. There is no command language runtime. I don't know. There is no common type library. There is no managed type runtime. All right, so that's D. Number 6. What is the purpose of .NET class libraries? And the purpose actually is A. They provide pre-written code that you can use in your application. That's what these libraries are. When you use the using statement, you are bringing in some of that library stuff. Number 7. What is the purpose of the CLR or Common Language Runtime? A lot of times they'll do that. And what I mean is, 6. What they'll do is they'll say this, and then it'll be down a question or two later. So number 7, what is the purpose of the Common Language Runtime? It doesn't provide pre-written code. That was already up here. That's the libraries. It doesn't specify formats. It doesn't specify data types. No. Number 7 is B. It manages the execution of .NET applications. So 4, 5, 6, and 7 are B, D, A, and B. Number 8. Before a C# application can be run, it must be compiled into a language called, again, you may or may not remember this. I said it's referred to as MISL, MS for Microsoft, IL for Intermediate Language. So number 8 is B, Microsoft Intermediate Language. Number 9, an assembly is. Again, you have to read the book to get that, but it is also B. All right. When you look, we had what? B, B, B. Sometimes in this book, that's what the authors do. They'll put 3, 4, even 5 in a row that are the same letter. Don't let that throw you one way or the other. All right. All right. Number 10, a solution is, well, you should, hopefully this one you should know by now. It is a container that holds projects. All right. Projects go into a solution, one or more projects. Number 11, which of the following is a not way? That should really say is not a way to open an existing project in Visual Studio. All right. There is a file open project. There is a file recent projects and solution. There is no file recent files. So 9, 10, and 11 are B, C, and C. All right, and then going on to number 12, Number 12, which of the following is a way to open a form in the Form Designer window? Which is a way? Well, hopefully you've already seen this, and that is to grab the form and double click on it. Number 13, which of the following is a way to open the code editor for a form? All right. And the answer is C. Find the form, right click on it, and choose View Code. Number 14, to write the C# code for a form, you use a Visual Studio window called, all right, to write the code, it's called the code editor. Now, if they had said to put the stuff on the form, it would have been the Form Designer. All right. Number 15, to work with the files of a solution, you use a Visual Studio window called C, the Solution Explorer. Number 16, a window that appears at the edge of the Visual Studio IDE is known as a docked window. And I showed you how you can move those windows around and then reset them. I already showed you that. All right. Number 17. Within Visual Studio, which window can you use to change the version of a .NET that a project is targeting? And it is D. We will be looking at that later in the semester. Project Properties window. So 15 is C, 16 is A, 17 is D. And for the last three, starting with number 18, to run a Windows Forms project, all right, B, you click the Start button. You can also click that green arrow. All right, we've talked about that before. That really is the Start button. Number 19, when you run a Windows Forms project, C. We haven't talked about this really, but the project is first built and then the project is run. All right. Finally, number 20, when you run a Windows Forms project, Visual Studio displays the project's first form, A. So those are the answers. I will go over all of them quickly one more time. Number 1 was C. Number 2 was D. Number 3 was B. Number 4 was B. Number 5 is D. Number 6 is A. Number 7 is B. Number 8 is B. Number 9 is B. Number 10 is C. Number 11 is C. Number 12 is B. Number 13 is C. 14 is D. 15 is C. 16 is A. 17 is D. 18 is B. 19 is C. And 20 is A. All right. Again, I'm asking you to do chapters 2 and 3 on your own, and then you can submit this one as well. Now, let's say that it was you took this test and you put D for the first answer. I wouldn't really take off for that because it does run within Visual Studio. It does. Some of these, I try to look at the answer and I say, when I'm grading these, I'm like, yeah, I can see where you'd come up with that. All right. Some of them, like if you put this, that would just definitely be wrong because that's a web application, not a desktop application. And what I typically do, like in here, there are 20 questions. All right. And I look at it and I say, basically, if you get 15, 16, you'll probably get either a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10. If you get 18, 19, or 20, you'll get 10 out of 10. If you make an effort where you at least try to answer the questions, I typically give you either a 7 or a 7.5. A 7 is a D, so if you tried but you got virtually everyone wrong, all right, but if you try and you get at least most of them right, you'll get a 7.5, which is a C. All right, that's the way that I grade that stuff, just so you are aware of it. All right, one more thing, and then we're going to call it a period. All right, again, you already saw this then. This was your homework. All right, please make sure. I don't want to see people get behind in here. This happened to some people last semester. You know who you are if that applies to you. I just don't want to see that happen to you. All right. I've tried to keep the homework at a minimum. I've tried to make sure that at least with some of the stuff, we're doing it as a class. If you turn in nothing, so when I come in on Monday morning and I look, through your stuff, I look through either your GitHub repository or again, you put this stuff in folders and you email it to me. And if you have nothing, you're going to be marked as absent for this past week. Remember, you only get 2 absences, then Rankin kicks you out of the class. You can't apply to be reinstated, and most of the time, they will reinstate you. All right, but you can't just say, well, why did you miss? Well, I didn't feel like doing the homework. That's not a really good excuse. If you say, hey, I was really sick all week, etc., most of the time they'll take you at your word. All right, so again, the test tomorrow, I don't remember if there's 3 problems or 4 problems. All right, I know there's at least 2 problems in there that are both console. Write your name 2 lines or something like that. That's literally it. Then there's going to be another one where you're basically asking, a person comes in and they're ordering a product or something like that. And it's going to be a lot where, very similar to like the kind of stuff we did in here. If you can understand that, you shouldn't have a problem with it. I don't remember what else was on the test, but I know that's at least 2 of the questions. That's 50%. I think there were 2 other ones. They may all be console. I don't believe so. I believe at least one is a Windows Forms app. Again, could I be wrong? Of course I can. All right. So tomorrow by 7 a.m., I will have emailed you an e-copy or an electronic copy of the test. I will go over the test from 8:05 till about 8:20 tomorrow. All right. And I will save that. But because, again, I don't want to share that with the other class, I'm going to send that out as a private video. All right. I will double check to try to make sure it comes up the way that it's supposed to. If for some reason, though, you say, hey, I didn't get it, or when I bring it up, it's garbage or whatever, you'll have to let me know. Your responsibility to let me know. And again, I will be online tomorrow until, all right, the whole period. So even, what you'll probably get tomorrow is you're going to have a screen that's going to be up like this one, but it's going to be the test page instead of this page. All right. And that's so if anybody comes and looks at it, that's what they're going to see. All right. I will be online, though, working for stuff for next week. All right. So this picture isn't going to change tomorrow. All right. And after 12 o'clock, I will be probably at least every half hour coming in and checking. All right. But tomorrow I will be at the main campus. All right. In Wentzville. So really at noon, what'll happen is I'm probably going to get in my car and drive home. So 12 to 12:30 inaccessible. But if you do send me an email during that time, I'll check when I get home and I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. Now, just so you know, some of you already do know this, some of you do not. All right. Totally legit to say, hey, I'm confused over this question. Is this what they mean? Totally fine. And I'll try to answer it as best I can. Not a good question, not an acceptable question is, hey, I've got this partially done. How many points are you going to give me for it? I have no idea. I don't answer questions like that, period. But even if I did, I wouldn't answer them until I looked at how everybody in the class had done on a problem. All right. Again, when we go through this, if you are the kind of person who gets up somewhat early and you have a chance to look at the test before I go over it, you can either ask questions, turn your mic on and ask a question in class, or email me with a question. I do promise I will get back with you as soon as I possibly can. All right. So tomorrow again will be the hands-on test, C# hot number 1. All right. Thursday, I'm sorry, tomorrow is Thursday. Friday, we will go over chapter 4 and if time, chapter 5. I will not have the tests graded by Friday morning. I'm not that good. I will grade them this weekend, or at least do my darndest to get them graded this weekend. And then if you go out to Inside Rankin, you should be able to go out there and find out your grade at that time. All right. So again, any questions that you have on the test tomorrow, feel free to email me. But as I said, with some of those questions, I don't think they're proper or right for me to answer. But especially if there's confusion, don't assume anything. All right. So with that said, good luck on the test tomorrow. It will be emailed to you by 7 a.m. I will talk to you at 8:05 a.m. tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks.